Hi there everyone, it's Dave from davestravelpages.com here, and this vlog post is about Bratislava, Budapest, the Brexit and bicycling. So let's start with why I've not done a vlog post for a while, and the reason for that is the missus came out to Bratislava to see me and we spent 10 days together, 10 awesome days it must be said, and we had 5 days here in Bratislava and 5 days in Budapest. So Bratislava then. I think in the UK, Bratislava has something of a reputation of being a place where you get a cheap flight to, you get some cheap drink, and then you go home with a hangover. That's a shame. I think Bratislava has a lot more to offer than that. It's a very charming city. It has lots of very beautiful buildings. It has a relaxed feel to it, chilled out vibe. I think you can see it mostly within 2 days, so it makes an ideal weekend break. If you see a flight come up and you're planning a weekend break to Europe, give Bratislava a go. You'd be pleasantly surprised. I wrote a blog post about it as well, which you can find at www.davestravelpages.com. From Bratislava then, we went to Budapest, and Budapest is a completely different city. It's a huge city. I think it's got a population of 2 million, and Hungary in total has 10 million. And it's set on the River Danube, and the buildings are like a neoclassical design, and they're enormous, they're colossal. And in fact, the city feels overwhelming. It's just each building has some character and personality about it, and it's very very elegant, sophisticated. If you don't know much about Budapest and know nothing about Hungary, I would suggest you visit it. I think your eyes would be opened and your preconceptions would be blown away by just how amazing this city is. We've got to see a lot of art galleries and museums and that sort of thing, and obviously we saw the major attractions. And yeah, I think by visiting it, you get an idea of what Hungary's about, and also perhaps what Europe's about as a whole, because obviously we have very preconceived ideas about what some countries are like, and I think Hungary is one of those countries. And this brings me neatly on to the Brexit issue. So while we were away, there was a vote in the UK whether or not the UK should leave the EU. And unfortunately, the UK voted by a slim majority to leave the EU. This is something that I don't agree with. I am in the Remain camp. And before I go on with this, I should say that by all means, leave a comment below. By all means, we can have a discussion, but don't troll. It's not here for trolling. This is just my opinion. And I will explain to you why I think we should remain within the EU, even though it's too late now. The reason we should remain in the EU is because we can influence events. We can have a say in what goes on in Europe. We can have a say about the way that the continent should react to threats from the outside, such as Russia, for example. We have an idea of how trade should develop. If we're sitting on a small island by ourselves in the middle of nowhere, we can't influence events. We can't help countries in need. We can't help develop countries within the east of Europe, so that the citizens have a better quality of life there. What we've done effectively in the UK is cut ourselves off from the continent, and we're trying to reenact a perfect isolation policy, and that policy has been proven not to work. A number of wars have been fought in Europe, and the point of the European Union was to bring people together so that these wars which tear the continent apart don't happen again. And we can't sit in a little islander syndrome in Britain and ignore Europe. We have economic ties, we have cultural ties. People have second homes in Europe. People travel through Europe. People work in Europe. People study in Europe, and vice versa, of course. And I think we've run the risk of cutting ourselves off culturally. The UK runs the risk of becoming a very inward-looking island, and that's a bad thing. Personally, I've worked and travelled throughout Europe freely. I've not needed any special paperwork, and I think that's enriched my life. I think it's made me more open-minded. It's made me see the world. I don't know everything about the world, obviously, but it's made me see the world for what it is a little bit more. And I can see how countries, the idea of Europe is to bring all countries up to a certain level. Obviously, it's not working out right now. The EU is not perfect. A lot of people who voted to leave, some of what they voted for, I agree with. The EU isn't perfect. It needs reform, but you can't reform it by being a small island cut off from Europe. You need to be in the club to reform it. Also in the UK, I think that, now I'm going to use my words carefully here, because some people that I know that have voted leave have done so for very good reasons. As I said, some of those reasons I agree with. However, there is a significant proportion of the people that voted leave that have done so for, let's not beat around the bush, for racist reasons. You know, they're xenophobic. All their problems are to do with foreigners, the bloody foreigners. And it's so narrow-minded, and it's disgusting and it's embarrassing. You know, it's and I've seen some of the headlines now of how people are, you know, the racist side is now coming out a little bit more in the UK, and I find that embarrassing. You know, we're better than that. You know, the Olympics that we held was really did showcase Great Britain to the world on how we accept people, and we're going back on ourselves. You know, and Europe's been down this path before, and it's quite a frightening time. So what can we expect now? I don't know. I mean, I hope that my niece and nephew would have the same opportunities that I did to be able to travel and work freely through Europe. Perhaps, you know, maybe they want to go to university in Holland. Perhaps they want to work in Greece. Perhaps they want to travel freely through Europe, and maybe that will be denied them now, because actually no one knows what's going to happen, because there isn't a plan now to separate from the EU. So all this is in the future. Anyway, I've aired my piece. If you want to leave a comment below, then by all means. I don't claim to be an expert on Europe, just on travel and work through Europe, and I've enjoyed it. And it's a you know, it's a two-way street. We have people coming to the UK to work, and people from the UK go to Europe to work. You know, seems pretty good, doesn't it? We all sort of mix and match. You know, mix it around a bit, get rid of that intolerance, maybe. Anyway, moving on. Let's leave that. Let's get back to bicycling. So I am going to leave Bratislava tomorrow, and I am going to be cycling down the River Danube, and, well, not on the river, obviously, by the path, by the side of the river. And tomorrow's going to be about a 100-kilometre day. I'm going to go past Vienna. I've visited Vienna before, so I will go past Vienna. And I've got about 20 days now until I get back to the UK, more or less. And it should mainly be flat now, I think, and it feels like I'm on the home stretch. So this is the last section of this bicycle tour from Greece to England. It's been very interesting so far, and I suspect it will be very interesting as I continue onwards. And along the way, it would be nice to get people's opinions from the countries that I pass through about what they think to the Brexit now. So maybe I'll start including some of that in my blog post, or maybe I'll just leave it. It's politics. Who cares, you know? Well, we should all care, really, shouldn't we? Anyway, that's enough of that. I will speak to you next time. Take it easy, guys. And that's it. Cheers for now. Bye.